everyone, and welcome to the Courage 365 show. I'm your host, Ashley Easter, and we have a great show for you tonight. We have a special guest, BilliJoy Carson, who I'm going to introduce in just a few minutes. But the topic we're going to be focusing on today is how conspiracy theories actually hurt trafficking survivors. So, this talk was prompted by a lot of the conspiracy theories that we are seeing pop up all over the place on social media about trafficking survivors. Different things like the Wayfair conspiracy theory, and just so many of them out there recently. And what we want to talk about today is how these conspiracy theories are not based in fact. And when we start sharing stories that are not based in fact, then it actually hurts the people we actually want to help. So, on the show today, we have a special guest who is an expert in addressing human trafficking. She's a human trafficking survivor herself and also an advocate, and she's done such amazing work. She has an organization called Kick at Darkness, and I'm going to just tell you a little bit about her. So, before I get into her typical bio, I want to let you know how special this show is tonight. You see, BilliJoy Carson, our guest, has been in a major accident several months ago. But this major accident caused a traumatic brain injury. And I'm just going to read a little note here so I can make sure to get all the terminology right. But I want to explain how special and important this meeting is, because she is sharing her time today even after all she has gone through. So BilliJoy is in the midst of an extremely challenging recovery process from a life-threatening spinal injury and surgery. The current effects of the injury are not conducive for her appearing on video with us tonight. So instead, we're going to be listening to her voice and her personality, and we'll have a picture up. Her heart and her voice are just so powerful, and she has so much wisdom. But while she's in this recovery process, we want to really just respect that process for her and just listen to her voice tonight as we're going to talk. She has firsthand knowledge of human trafficking. She's worked in this for so many years. And so we're just really thankful that she agreed to be on the show despite all of the painful things she's experienced. On to her more formal bio. BilliJoy Carson is a survivor of child sex trafficking and rape as an adult. She founded and is president of Kick at Darkness, a nonprofit to help survivors on their healing journey and bring training to the community. BilliJoy is currently recovering from a traumatic brain injury after a spinal cord injury from a fall. She is relearning how to walk, talk, and feed herself, and so much more. The badass fight continues, and she is a badass. I mean, the things she's experienced in her life, the organizations and people she's helped and continues to help, it's incredible. And even with everything that she is healing from right now, she is still willing to show up on this show. And so we're not going to put her picture up there tonight. We want to respect her healing process, but you're going to learn so many great things. So this is definitely something you're going to want to tune into. So, BilliJoy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashley, for your invitation to come today.
You know, we are just so honored to have you here. Thank you for taking the time, particularly with everything that you've been through. You are a hero.
Well, I appreciate that. It has definitely been an interesting journey
For sure.
to come on.
Yeah, definitely. And I would just love, I kind of gave a nutshell version of your bio, and I know that doesn't even touch the surface of your experience. Would you give us the nutshell version of your story and the work you do?
Yeah. When I was 4 years old, I was playing with a doll that hung on the wall in our senior pastor's office at our church. And all of the kids played with the doll. And I was playing with it when the pastor came in and asked me, did you get permission to touch that doll? And being 4, I'm terrified. 1, I did not know we needed permission, but 2, how terrifying that I did something without permission.
Mm.
And I told him that I had not asked for permission, and he said that he was going to have to take me and my family before the church, and my dad
Mm.
would probably lose his job, and my mom would lose her doctors, and it was my fault.
Mm.
And he would do what he could that we wouldn't lose our house, but it probably would happen.
Wow.
And I burst into tears and I begged him not to do it. And he said, "There is one other way. Since you touched something of mine without asking, I will touch something of yours without asking."
Mm.
And I remember being so excited that my family was safe. And that began the journey of him molesting me until I was 6. He molested me until I was 12, but at 6, he sold me to a child pornographer who moved in next door to me.
Mm.
And at 8, I was sold to a trafficker who moved in 2 houses down.
Wow.
And so I lived at home and I protected their secrets from everyone
Mm.
because I thought that I would lose everything that I had, that my family would lose everything if anyone knew what I was doing.
Wow.
And for a side reference, in my state of Arizona, at that time, children were arrested for selling their bodies.
Mm.
And it wasn't until 1994 that anyone under 14, it was not considered, they were considered victims.
Hmm.
But before that, it was considered a victimless crime, and they
Wow.
would arrest the children.
Hmm.
So it was a threat that was always there. Um, I was finally freed at 14 after I was attacked by a dog that it took 126 stitches to put my face back together.
Mm.
And the trafficker told me, just don't come back.
Mm.
Um,
Wow.
and by that time, the pastor was not around, and the pornographer had either moved on or been killed. Both options are potentials.
Right.
Um, and then when I was 26, 2 strangers attacked me in a bathroom and beat me and raped me and left me
Mm.
for dead.
Wow. Wow.
Um, yeah, and it wasn't until I started to heal, going
Mm.
to therapy, working on my healing myself, that I realized how difficult it is for survivors to get healing.
Yeah.
And through that process, I founded Kick at Darkness based on the quote that is kick at the darkness until it bleeds daylight.
Mm.
And I am forgetting the singer's name who has that quote, but it is from a song.
Right.
Um, and the what Kick at Darkness does is, the main goal is to help survivors get the healing that they need without having to mortgage their souls to do it.
Mm. Yeah.
And connecting survivors also to creative access healing. So if talk therapy is not working, then maybe they need self-defense. That is what will help them break through.
Right.
Or maybe they need art therapy or to go take care of horses. So we do not specifically have equine therapy
Mhm.
because that requires a therapist on site, but we have the availability of working alongside horses and taking care of them.
Hmm.
And that does such emotional work. So
Right.
it is more peer support there. Um,
That's amazing.
and our biggest thing that we became not maybe known for, but filling the gap of the need is the warrior kit.
Mm,
Um, and that is a PTSD survival kit. It addresses all of the five physical senses
okay.
plus emotional and mental.
Wow.
So it has things like coloring book and colors and Play-Doh, lavender to smell or drink, um, sound makers, all these different things to show survivors that not all of us are grounded by the same sense.
Right.
And not every sense, like if smell works great for me today,
Mhm.
it's not guaranteed to work great tomorrow.
Right.
But what these kits also do is bring a creative access to things that can ground
Yeah,
because it's not feasible to take a weighted blanket into a business meeting.
exactly.
But if you are triggered, what can you use around you that will
Mm,
do the same thing?
right.
And most of the items in the kits come from either my own personal experience of helping or other survivors that have said, "This helped me. Can you add it to the kit?"
It's amazing. Wow.
And each of the survivors then, if they got a warrior kit, they have a volunteer that will talk to them about getting them to what is the next step. We're not just going to give you a kit and walk away.
Mhm.
Um, how do we make sure that you have a support team, a support network? Um, we do have advocates who work with us, but we are not an advocate agency.
Okay.
Our goal is to work with people who already work with survivors and connect them,
Great.
so that we, to be clear, we do not have anyone in place to take calls or emails ongoing.
Right.
But we do have the resources that we can point people to those. We do answer if people reach out to us, of course, but we are not set up to be the advocacy place.
Right.
Um, I also, right now, I am in the healing bench, but when I am normally on the field of play, I help train the community through Kick It Darkness, but train the community on the reality of sex trafficking and of survivors being all around us.
Mm,
And that in Arizona, we have zero 24/7 rape crisis centers.
wow.
And right, even people that work here, they say, no, that's not correct. It can't be correct. And then you say, yeah, there's nothing that is 8 to 5, Monday through Friday.
Oh my
So
gosh.
if the people who would assault people could just do a normal work week, only assault between 8 and 5, Monday through Friday, we could help survivors really well.
Right. Right. Oh my god.
But right now, there is a gap in the provision, um, and we do not have a place dedicated for rape kits.
Hmm.
So you might go to the hospital and they do not know anything about a rape kit, and they do not know there is a way to call someone there to do the rape kit. But
Interesting.
if that nurse doesn't know,
Yeah.
it doesn't happen.
Oh my gosh.
So
Huh.
those are the things that we, as well as testifying or talking to the Senate and wherever we are needed there, working alongside the coalitions here in Arizona,
Right.
as well as speaking in other states to help move the conversation of not just trafficking survivors, but sexual assault and domestic violence and hate crime survivors, um,
Amazing. Wow.
as well as some child abuse. But we try to link with the coalitions that work
Mhm.
focused on child abuse.
Right. Right. Wow. That is fantastic what you're doing, and your story, it's it's truly heartbreaking, and that the first person who trafficked you was a pastor. That's devastating. He was a person of trust in your community,
Mhm.
and that he would take advantage of that trust is horrific. But to see what you're doing now for so many people and what you have done for years with standing in the gap of those resources that aren't available in your state, that takes so much, so much strength to be able to come through what you've come through and then turn around and create these amazing resources. Like, I love I think you call it a warrior kit. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
I,
We we think of survivors as warriors out on the field of battle.
mm,
And so then even if you're flat on your face in the mud of the battle,
yeah.
you're still a warrior with your sword and you're still in the middle of fighting.
Yeah.
You have there's no shame in falling.
Right.
There's you are not out of the battle, you are just having a trouble. Even Wonder Woman, there are scenes where she is down on the field of battle
Yes.
and she gets up, but
Mm-hmm.
she does not do it alone. She
Right.
gets up with those around her. They're able to help.
Mm.
And we also remind survivors that there is a difference between, use the analogy of physical strength, there is a
Uh-huh.
difference between gym strong and country strong.
Mm.
If you worked on a farm your whole life
Right.
versus you have someone who worked in a gym their whole life, like worked out,
Right.
one has ongoing, continuing endurance strength, and
Yeah.
one does not.
Right. Right.
And survivors have the farm strong strength in their souls.
Hmm. That's
And
I
it means that you got to get dirty.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
got to get, you're going to have to crawl through the mud. You're going to have to be sweaty. You're going to be crying,
Right.
but you're going to be strong also.
You use such empowering language around survivors and even the name of your organization, Kick at Darkness. I love that so much because there are sometimes organizations that just the very way they talk about those who have been wounded by any type of abuse, human trafficking or otherwise, and it's very diminishing language that can be used sometimes, but you purposefully use strong, empowering language, and I have to believe that makes a huge difference in the healing of those who come forward to you and
Yeah,
you're able to serve. So thank you for doing that. Um,
absolutely.
I'd love to ask you a question. So hearing your story and knowing you're a trafficking survivor, and then hearing about the work that you're doing, I think you're the perfect person to ask this question to. And that is, what is human trafficking?
I appreciate that question. I was speaking at an event one time and they told me do not take any questions until the end. And the conference was on human trafficking.
Mm,
And at the very end, I took a woman's question and she said, I have a question. What is trafficking?
mm,
And I was like, see, this is why we ask questions
right.
along the way,
Yes.
because of course you would be lost if you have no idea what I am talking about.
Right. Right.
And human trafficking is the giant umbrella of the global problem that is one of the biggest criminal businesses in the world.
Mm,
It is the forceful exploitation of humans, both adults and children, by enslaving them for work, for sex, or for selling of babies.
mm,
And there are many subcategories under each one of those.
right.
Um, what I focus on through Kick of Darkness, we focus on the sex trafficking
Gotcha.
and the control for to be considered a trafficker. You have to be levying some sort of control over the person.
Mm,
It might be physical restraints, like you have them tied up or you're holding a gun to them
Right.
or a knife or some sort of weapon. It might be blackmail.
Mhm.
They may have uh, naked pictures of someone,
Gotcha.
or they may have knocked someone out, put a naked child in bed with them, and taken pictures of them, and
Mm,
say, "Now what? I own you."
right.
And so, some sort of a blackmail they can hold over them, so they can let that person walk free in the world because
Mm,
that person is not going to do anything to upset them.
gotcha.
Then there's also the threats, and that could be, "We will hack your system and do whatever to your company," or
Mhm.
um, for me, it was your parents will lose their house and their job and their doctors.
Right.
Um, so there's many different ways that a person can be controlled. It might even be they have your children
Mm,
and or they have your pets, which for a single person that has no children, the pets can hold the same emotional
sure.
pull and control over them.
Yeah.
Um, it might be they are holding your dissertation
Mm,
and they're whatever it is that you have of great value that they now have control of. And then the sale doesn't necessarily mean money changed
okay.
hands.
That's good to know.
We A lot of people assume that it definitely includes a great amount of it is money changing hands,
Right.
but it could be favors.
Mm,
So um I will let you gas up your tank if you let me take your daughter in the back.
wow.
um
Yeah.
I will let you get all the groceries if you let me take your son
Hmm.
for the night.
Right, right.
Um, it might be for power. You have someone that is getting to be an elected official
Mhm.
um, because they are allowing things to happen. Um, or it might be on a smaller scale. You get to be our senior pastor because you're letting this happen or you're causing it to happen.
Mm,
Um,
right.
it might be authority that I'm the one who actually has the power and authority, but because you are trafficking girls to me, I'm giving you the authority to wield.
Hmm.
Um, it might be a job position for the trafficker that you are now CEO of my company um, because you are allowing me to use your girls for all of my employees. Um, Human trafficking, the umbrella of human trafficking globally is $150 billion annually.
Wow. That's a lot of
And
money.
it is a lot of money. Sex trafficking alone is $99 billion annually globally.
My gosh.
Um, there are a lot of people who claim reports that they know how much it is in America, but that is not true.
Hmm.
The reports come out and say all the Western countries together is one number, and all of the Eastern countries together is one number, and it goes on like that. But
Okay.
there is nothing that separates out the US. And
Hmm.
I there might be some people that could say by state, but even that is inaccurate because traffickers move. They
Right.
bring the girl people in when they need them and move
Yeah.
out when it's moved on. They generally do stay within a region of like if they're in the US, they're gonna stay in the US.
Mhm.
But that is iffy on itself too. Um, for sex trafficking, the reason it is one of the biggest businesses is because drugs and ammo and guns I can only sell to you one time.
Gotcha. Yeah. You can sell a
And
person over and over.
right, I the average for a child is 15 times a day that they're sold.
Mm. Gosh.
And they use them until they are empty.
Hmm.
Um, the estimate for not for the human trafficking umbrella, but the estimate for the sex trafficking. victims is 4.6 million globally.
Wow. Wow.
And victims are still arrested for crimes they were forced to commit by traffickers.
Hmm.
And only in certain states are they protected. In a lot of countries, they are not protected.
Wow.
Um, and so if I had your children and told
Mhm.
you, I will kill your children or you go get me two more girls, you're more than likely going to get me two more girls.
Gotcha. Yep. There's the blackmail
But
again.
you, right, and you are now guilty of the kidnapping of those two girls. I am not. I
Right.
will be guilty of holding them in place, but I did not kidnap them. You did.
Right. Right.
Um, and for children, it is 1%. For children that are sex trafficked, it is 1% who live to adulthood.
Hmm. Wow.
And so it is a very, we have to catch and intercede for the children,
Hmm.
all of them, but there's a higher survival rate for adults than for children.
Right. Right.
Um, there are different types of traffickers. Um, these would be the smaller umbrellas under the sex trafficking. There are the romancers, the kidnappers, the gatherers, and the threateners.
Okay.
And the romancers elicit attention with gifts,
Okay.
promises, and dates. Um, and the person that is being romanced really thinks they're in a relationship.
Gotcha.
Usually it would be for middle schoolers, but we're
Mhm.
hearing more and more with college students.
Okay.
Um, and in the middle of one of the relationships, they will have given a really big gift that the
Hmm.
person wanted. This isn't just girls, it is girls and boys, um, and young adults. It rarely happens with women and men
Mhm.
because they have their eye out a little more.
Right.
But it
Right.
but it can happen. It can.
Right.
Um, so right after they've given them some really big gift that was, big quotes, hard for them to get, which
Mhm.
wasn't because they have all the money in the world to go get it.
Yeah.
Now the person owes them, or they
Hmm.
feel like they owe them. And so then they bring in their friend and say, I was so nice to you. Why do it's his birthday. Why don't you give him a blowjob?
Right.
And
Right.
then they're like, well, I feel like I owe them. And so they do it. But
Mhm.
then the next time it's full sex. And
Right.
now they're already too far in. They didn't realize they are now being owned. And the people have pictures of them. They
Hmm.
tell them they will put them on social media. They will, even that usually is enough to completely control them. We
Right.
have pictures of you having sex with this person or you giving a blowjob to this person, and we will put that all over social media. So
Right.
that is the romancers. And so that person may or may not have been kidnapped, but usually not.
Okay.
Um, they usually will be living amongst you.
Okay.
And um, those ones, you pay attention to your youth when they suddenly have new things.
Mm.
Where did you get them? They
Mhm.
will have all sorts of answers for it, but be nosy
Right.
and
Right.
chase it down.
Yeah.
Um, the next group is kidnappers, and they are actually extremely rare. They're the ones we talk most about, but they
Right.
are the most rare. And the reason is they know the traffickers do not want to house, clothe, and feed their stock.
Right.
They want someone else to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it does happen, but usually if you go and you look it up, the person who was kidnapped was actually waiting at a rest stop and no one else was around.
Right.
Um,
Right.
or they were hitchhiking along a road at 2 a.m.
Mhm.
It wasn't that there was a group of women at a mall and one of them was taken.
Right.
Not
Right.
to say that can't happen.
Mhm.
It's just traffickers are in it for a business and they're not going to draw attention to themselves
Exactly.
in a
Yes. Yep.
stupid way.
Right. And then you don't have a missing persons report if that person continues their life, um,
Right.
continues going to work, but, you know, performs
Right.
sex acts on the side. Yeah.
Yeah. The next one is the gatherers, and they take, I believe the last number that we had was within 36 hours that LGBT youth have been kicked out on the streets, traffickers have picked them up.
Ugh. Mm.
Um, and then the runaways,
Okay.
and um, no one is looking for them.
Right.
No one cares that they're missing. The
Right.
runaways, they might care, but the LGBT, no one cares that they're missing.
Mm-hmm.
And if they have babies when they have been taken and they're the ones that would be held inside a room and not let out, they
Gotcha.
would be moved from hotel to hotel to hotel and the men come to them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if they get pregnant there, all the better for the traffickers because now there's a baby that no one knows exists
Mm.
and no one's looking for. And
Right.
they can sell those children for top dollar to people that would raise them in their homes simply to abuse them
Hmm.
and then eventually kill them or sell them.
Hmm.
But no one knows they exist.
Right.
And then
Wow.
the LGBT youth that they were using and that is now the parent um, will likely be killed at that point in time.
Hmm.
And their body will be found as a either an unknown body was found in the desert or an overdose was found.
Gotcha.
Um, and then they have free and clear babies to use.
Right.
Um,
Wow. Mm.
the the threateners, they're the ones who control people from home. They
Hmm.
don't have to house, feed, or clothe them.
Yep.
Um, they're different than the romancers because there's no romance at all. They outright are threatening.
Gotcha.
Um, and it might start, I have you, but if you don't do what I want, I'm going to take your little sister.
Right. Right.
And they can fully control somebody. Now, this group might actually kidnap at first.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the one to pay attention if you have say, a teenager that went missing for 3 days and is back and will not say where they were at.
Mm.
It is
It's a
very,
red flag.
very, it's a huge red flag that they have taken were either pictures of them naked taken or they were broken by being raped multiple times.
Hmm.
And now they've come back. And it does not mean that every person that disappeared and comes back that has happened to them, but definitely talk with your kids, talk with your friends about if something ever happened to you and someone tells you that I will be angry with you or I will kick you out, it is untrue. And I'm
Right.
telling you in advance
Mm-hmm.
so that I cannot prevent it from happening. But
Right.
what I can do is prevent losing you if it happens.
Right. Right.
So it's opening that line of communication.
Hmm. That's
Um,
powerful.
we had parents that reached out to us and said they reached out to us on a Friday and said our daughter is missing. She was coming home from school. We have the report in. We're all in a panic, and we think that traffickers took her. And then they called back on Sunday and said it's okay, she is home.
Hmm.
And I had gotten the voicemail like through our system,
Right.
and I immediately called them and I said, "Get out of town right now.
Hmm.
Take your daughter and leave."
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if she simply was just away for a little bit, it won't matter that you're out of town.
Right.
But if if you're out of town and she starts to freak out while you're out of town,
Mm-hmm.
now you know that you can start to identify things.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Well, that is such helpful information. And I've studied human trafficking a little bit, but I would have to say this is one of the most detailed descriptions of it. So thank you for kind of laying that groundwork for
Mm-hmm.
me, for our audience. That was super helpful. I'd love to transition the conversation into another question. And that is, there have been so many conspiracy theories going around about human trafficking. Um, I think one of the most recent ones that I've heard of was the Wayfair conspiracy theory. And for
Hmm.
those of you who are listening but aren't familiar with that, basically the company Wayfair was accused of human trafficking people, and the pretty much the only evidence that was shown for that was that they had some of their stock priced really high, and some of the names on the stock items also happened to line up with the names of some missing persons. So this kind of blew up into a whole conspiracy theory. Um, Billy Joy, what do you think about that conspiracy theory? Do you believe it? Why or why not?
Um, well, I think I would like to start with a quote from Bridget Carr. She's the professor of law at the University of Michigan
Uh huh.
and the head of the human trafficking clinic. She says, I think the real answer here is that people are unwilling to see trafficking as it actually happens,
Hmm.
yet are eagerly willing to make it up stuff about it.
Right.
And
Wow.
I believe that this has been a romanticized, far off giant.
Hmm.
Um, it's much easier to just traffic kids than it is to build an in depth online website and registry about it.
Right.
Um, Now we note that this isn't Backpage.com that blatantly listed adults and children for sale.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the company claimed they were innocent because they were not responsible for third party ads
Mm.
until 2018 that FOSTA, Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act, was
Hmm.
signed,
Wow.
which said you are responsible if you know about it. And you
Yeah.
clearly know about it because you're saying you're not responsible for it.
Right.
Um, and so it was the first time that since the internet was created, that websites were no longer protected from third parties posting things on their sites and they have knowledge of it.
Hmm.
Um, so now it means that victims and their families and states can go after the companies and their CEOs and the CEOs' assets, their personal assets.
Right.
So knowing that for something to be so blatantly obvious, it would be stupid.
Right.
It would be they are setting themselves up for horrible failure.
Hmm.
But outside of that, let's just look at the I want to be clear that human trafficking is a global crisis. I'm not saying it is not a global crisis.
Right.
Um, but when we make up these potential giants that we have to take down of these myths and rumors, we're not looking at what we actually are part of the trafficking, like forced labor around the globe, making the things we buy, consume, wear,
Mm.
use.
Yeah.
In 2017, 152 million minors globally were doing
Mm.
child labor for those things that we use. And
Wow.
of those, 73 million worked in hazardous labor
Hmm.
conditions.
Gosh.
But we come back to Wayfair, and as you said, they're listing a cabinet, and the cabinet is for $9,000 to $14,000. And we go, clearly something's going on here. But if you go over to a commercial listing, which Wayfair's things are supposed to be strong enough for commercial, those listings are the same.
Right.
That it is it is a heavy duty cabinet.
Yeah.
And so but people look at the price and they say, oh, it must be a trafficked child. But then they also added in, if you take the SKU number and take it to the Russian Yandex search engine and drop it in, images of children come up.
Hmm.
You know what else happens if I take my birth date and put it in there? Images of children come
That's a
up.
really
If
good
I put
point.
the alphabet in there, images of so it's a logarithm problem. It is not the SKU numbers.
Right.
Then they said it's the names of missing children matching the names of the Wayfair products. However, the names that people found, those children were missing for 4 days and found, are not currently missing. They're
Hmm.
missing for 2 days and found, 24 hours and found. Of the entire listing, only one is still missing, Eureka Castro.
Wow.
All of the rest of them have been found, and on top of that, have pled their case to please take my name out of this. Those
Wow.
children have posted videos saying, I am not missing. You are you are taking my story and you are wielding it for your own purposes,
Ugh,
which is harming a survivor.
exactly.
And
Mm.
that's the direct harm of a direct survivor. I know that later we're going to talk a little bit about the harm it does for all survivors. Um, but uh, the next question we were going to talk about the T Rex and the crocodile.
Yeah, yeah. Let's actually just move right on to that because Billy Joy and I had this conversation over Messenger, and she shared this really great analogy. So basically, I wanted to know if if it's not real human trafficking happening when we like look at these conspiracy theories, and you've pointed out how that wouldn't make sense for the way fear conspiracy theory to be true. Does it really hurt people if we share these conspiracies? What do you think about that?
Yes, yes, it hurts people phenomenally because it would be the same as walking a tour group through the Everglades and telling stories about T-Rex.
Mm-hmm.
And you're giving the size of T-Rex, the bite radius of a T-Rex, the footprint of a T-Rex, all the information that actually is true about a T-Rex.
Yeah.
Like it might be true about Backpage. But as you're walking along and everyone's mind is on this giant predator so huge beyond the brain's comprehension,
Mm-hmm.
they stop seeing and caring about the swarms of crocodiles that are surrounding them.
That is such a good metaphor. That is so good. Yes.
And when you look at those individual crocodiles, they appear mild in comparison to what you know about a T Rex.
Mm-hmm.
But they are deadly and they are prolific.
Right.
And this creates a mob mentality because they believe if the mob can topple the T Rex, then trafficking will be won.
Mm.
And parents trafficking their children will go unseen.
Hmm.
Pastors and ministers and priests and reverends trafficking their congregants will go unseen.
Yep.
Boyfriends and husbands trafficking their partners will go unseen. School teachers, principals, school counselors, daycare workers trafficking the children and teachers in their care will go unseen.
Hmm.
And teenagers trafficking other teenagers will go unseen.
Right.
The crocodiles run rampant and no one cares as they look high into the horizon to topple the elusive T Rex.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then survivors with crocodile sized wounds and scars are swept to the side as unreliable or unimportant
Mm.
because the T Rex is the only news.
Mm. That is
Now,
such a good metaphor. Wow.
we do want to look and say, have there been T Rexes? Yes, there absolutely have been.
Mm-hmm.
There are underground networks of trafficking rings, but they are not dumb enough to make a website
Right.
or have symbols that people can see.
Yeah.
But what they are smart enough is to have things that would make you look the other way.
Mm.
So there are communication symbols that they do use. Absolutely, I can attest to that. But they aren't going to let you know about it.
Right. Exactly.
And um, if if wayfarers, if it was legitimately trafficking children, there would be news about it, like there was news about Backpage,
Right.
and there would be so many lawsuits coming about against it.
Yep.
Um, especially now that the door is open
Yeah.
to have those lawsuits.
Yep.
Um, Another bit of the harm is the websites and the hotlines, like
Mm-hmm.
National Human Trafficking Hotline, which is an emergency hotline to either identify that someone is being trafficked or so to identify someone. So, like, say you were driving down the road and you saw someone kidnap someone,
Yep.
you can text that line with all the information, and their researchers and their people will work to figure out what is going on.
Right.
Um, But survivors can also text it and say, "I just escaped, I need help."
Mhm.
But their systems are being flooded to the point of breaking under the weight of people calling in and reporting what is everywhere. Everybody's talking about Wayfair.
Yeah.
It is You can equate it to driving up and there's a crowd of people watching a bunch of firefighters put out a fire, and everyone in the crowd is calling 911 to report the fire.
Right.
It's like there are real 911 calls that need to be heard.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying don't report something if you see something.
Right.
I'm
Right.
saying don't use your wisdom.
Yeah.
Don't don't like watch a CNN report and then call them and update them. They know.
Right.
They know. The other thing is a mob burned a house down that was suspected of trafficking. No conclusive evidence, just suspected.
Right.
And what this causes is the mob feels victorious. But
Mhm.
what they don't know is if there was a shipment of people coming to that house, that shipment, think of the slave ships,
Yeah.
you got to dump it in the ocean, just get rid of them because we can't be caught with them.
Right. Right.
And so those children, those women, those men, they are going to be usually sold to the death buyers, the ones who want people that they can kill.
Mm.
Or they're going to be overdosed and left all over the city.
Right.
Um, the traffickers are businessmen primarily. If they
Mhm.
can save their people, they will, but they want to save themselves above all.
Right.
And so by storming the castle, so to speak, and burning this house down, no one thought about the connected houses
Yep.
because the traffickers don't know how you found out.
Right.
They are going to assume they're all outed and they're all in danger.
Yep. Yep.
And potentially they're going to blame one of the girls that they outed them and they will rape them to death.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that is because people chose not to use the organizations already in place to
Right.
do this work.
Yeah, it's these random vigilantes who they think they're doing something good, but they're not educated to know what the right thing is to do, so they're causing greater harm.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for shining a light on that. And I think this is really helpful and hopefully just a word to everybody listening. As advocates, we have a heart for helping people. We want to step in and help people, but it is so important to get educated, to reach out to the experts who are dealing with these things. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Don't try to do this vigilante stuff without having the the expertise. And there are so many places you can get trained for that and different
Mm-hmm.
organizations you can partner with. And BilliJoy, I just want to ask you one more quick question before we go to commercial, and that's, what can we do to avoid promoting false narratives like the Wayfair one? How can we help victims and not promote these false narratives?
Mm-hmm. Well, I wanted to say one more thing for the previous thing. It's the greatest harm of all,
Yeah.
and it's making the public doubt that trafficking is real at all.
Ooh.
And that is what is happening when we share conspiracy
Mm.
theories. Um, what we can do to avoid promoting false narratives is, like you said, listen to the experts across the country and around the world. There are trainings in every city to become an advocate. It's going to be like hell. You have to go through a week of learning about every possible horror
Yeah.
so that you can be the person fighting for the people that have gone through this.
Right.
Um, and be mindful of when you hear stories of a T-Rex, be mindful that there are more crocodiles than there ever were T-Rexes.
Right. Yeah.
And fight for those who are survivors of the crocodiles. Because as you're fighting against the T-Rex, your own children might be taken by the crocodiles.
Right. Right.
And um, then there's a text line that if you see anything, or if you yourself are a survivor that needs help, the text is Be Free. It is 233733.
I'm going to write that
And
down so I can leave that in the comment. Can you say that again?
yeah, it is Be Free. So it's on your number pad, it is BEFREE, which is 233733.
233733.
33.
Okay.
Yeah, and that is for trafficking survivors.
Okay.
I witnessed a girl being drugged down the road. She was half naked, she was bleeding, and I was able to not only call the police, which can get the report started,
Mhm.
but call the experts, which is this nonprofit,
Wow.
and text them with pictures of the scene, then the information of the report so that they could contact the police later to gather more information. But it allows a non it is a non-government agency
Okay.
that they are able to then use all of their networks to help rescue.
That's excellent.
And when they need to, they can use the official things that are in place, courts and police.
That's
Um,
incredible. We're
and
definitely going to put that in the comments.
education is the number one thing.
Yeah.
Educate yourself
Yeah.
and check your education. So if somebody's like, no, trust me, this is the right information, Google, just
Right.
Google it
Right.
and see if that information only ever comes up in individual blogs and never comes up on
Mhm.
a nonprofit's website.
Right.
Maybe put that in the back of your head because
Mm.
it's not going to be helpful.
Right.
You can also message nonprofits and say, hey, this thing that I want to put in the back of my head, I'd like to run by you first.
Mhm.
um because maybe it is the one tip that they needed, but more than likely it's something that everyone has heard in theories a lot, but it is not real.
Right. I love that. And a lot of nonprofits, like you don't have to use their hotlines. You can just send them a message to the regular business page if it's a non urgent thing. If you're just, you just had an idea or thought of something new that you think the nonprofit hasn't heard of. If it's not an
Mhm.
urgent thing, don't use their hotline, use the regular business line for anybody listening.
Yeah, and for education, human trafficking hotline, Polaris, they have a bunch of education, and then RAINN.org.
Mm-hmm.
It's Rape Abuse Incest National Network. Um, both of those sites have pages and pages of information.
Excellent.
And then Shared Hope International, which I think is sharedhope.org.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, kickadarkness.org or .com.
Awesome.
We have info too.
That's excellent. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Those are some
Absolutely.
really practical steps that people can take. We're going to take a minute for just a short ad, and then we'll be right back with BilliJoy.
So there's choices that you have the opportunity to make. You can either stay with your abuser or you can leave. And make no mistake about it, it's going to be hard either way you go. But I can tell you one thing for sure. If you do decide to make that courageous decision to go, there's hope. So much hope.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Courage 365 show. I'm your host, Ashley Easter, and I am in the middle of an interview with BilliJoy Carson, trafficking survivor, now turned advocate, and founder, president of Kick at Darkness. BilliJoy, you have shared so much wonderful information with us tonight. Super useful, practical things, helping us dispel myths about human trafficking and all the conspiracy theories. I have another question for you, and that is just from all of your life experience, from all of your trainings and the things you teach, what is that one piece of advice that you would want to share with us, the best piece of advice you've learned?
That was one of the hardest things to narrow down until I started thinking about what was the biggest thing that helped me heal.
Mm.
And that was run right at triggers to destroy them.
Mm.
And before that, I had been taught avoid them, pack them up, put them on the shelf, and then just never walk by that shelf
Right.
ever.
Right.
And but that makes you it makes you a prisoner in your own life.
Mm.
And so I had been freed from trafficking, but I had enslaved myself to my triggers.
Wow.
And my therapist said the only way to break a trigger is to run directly at it and slam into it.
Hmm.
And once I had that, I was like, oh, well, no one told me that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I am going to. One of the triggers was public bathrooms because I was assaulted in a public bathroom.
Mm.
And so a group of friends and I drove across the city and just went into bathroom after bathroom, going in, washing my hands, and turning to face the door because that's where I was hit.
Mm.
And the first few times I was shaking and nearly collapsing.
Hmm.
But by the 10th time, we were laughing, and my brain was replacing them with my trauma.
Wow.
And I destroyed the trigger to the point that I was using uh, the gender neutral bathroom at a conference
Mm-hmm.
and was washing my hands. And there was a man next to me, and we were cracking a joke together.
Wow.
And I turned to dry my hands, and it didn't occur to me at all. At all. It
Hmm.
didn't come to my mind. And my friend was bouncing up and down and like clapping her hands and bouncing out the door. And I didn't know why until she was like, "Don't you see what you just did?" And I was like, "I was in the bathroom. I don't understand." And she was like, "Come on." But it's because I had destroyed the trigger. I didn't just calm
Wow.
it, I destroyed it. And
Wow.
it is possible, but it is hard and it hurts.
Mm.
But it is the only way to get free from them.
Wow.
And so if you think of it as the trigger has a loop that is attaching to you and you are taunt
Mm-hmm.
against the trigger,
Yep.
the only way to unhook is to run directly at it so that the hook
Mm.
can come off.
That's
And
so smart.
it is terrifying, but it is the best advice I ever got.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And I love how you had a community of people supporting you through that. Like, you didn't just go into all those bathrooms alone the first couple
Mm-mm.
times. Like, you had a support system. And I love this idea of running at the triggers to destroy them, but having like an army beside you, a support system.
Yeah.
That is so beautiful. And everybody who's listening to the show, I know they're going to want to check out your website, your social media. You've got a book. Tell us where people can find you online.
My website is BilliJoy.com. That's BILLIJOY.com.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to make that as hard for everybody as possible. There's 4 letters that if they're capitalized, they all look the same.
Right.
But it's BILLIJOY.com.
Excellent.
And on Facebook, the page is Badass BilliJoy,
Mm-hmm.
and Instagram is the same. But Twitter is VashiGirl36, and that's like Queen Vashti, who stood up and said, "No more, I will not take your abuse anymore."
Yeah.
So that's VASHTI girl GIRL the number 36 on Twitter.
Excellent.
My book is an adult coloring and activity book for survivors of trauma,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all illustrations that I have done, and then I write about the skill or the learning experience in how it helps me heal. So it's taking my journey and helping others walk through it. And so it has places for people to go through their own note taking or their own drawing,
Uh-huh.
and then also to color. And that is called Rising Up in an Uprising. And it's available on either my site or on Amazon.
Excellent. We are going to be linking to all of that information as soon as I get off this video, that's the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to update the description so you'll be able to check all of that out. Go ahead and get BilliJoy's adult coloring book. Do you know how therapeutic those things are? They are so therapeutic, and it sounds like she's added so many other tips and tools in the adult coloring book. BilliJoy, that coloring book, it's not just for trafficking survivors, but abuse survivors in general. Is that right?
Yes, it's for all trauma survivors.
Okay.
I have had people reach out to me that were traumatized on a work site from a building falling, and it helped them. That had
Wow.
never occurred to me, but of course, there's going to be trauma in your life
Yes.
almost ending.
Excellent. Wow.
And so it is for all levels of trauma. I would say
Mm-hmm.
that it is a little bit more teen and above.
Okay.
I have a judge who requested me to make a children's book specifically, which my injury happened before I could do that. But
Right.
I am currently working on a follow-up to this coloring book that would be specifically for LGBTQ hate crime survivors.
Wow. That's powerful. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, BilliJoy. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your tools, and all of this just very educational information tonight. Really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It was our pleasure. Everybody, BilliJoy was awesome, and I want you to check out her social media, but I also want you to go to the Courage 365 social media. You will see all of our social media below on the bar just down below me. And if you have not gone to our YouTube channel and given us a subscribe, please do that. We have about 50 subscribers now, so we just need 50 more people, and then we can get a custom URL on our YouTube channel. And our other social media channels have people following us, but we really need more on YouTube. So just go to YouTube and then type in Courage 365. Give us a follow, give us a subscribe, and that will help us get that custom domain so we can get the word out to even more people. And of course, you can go to courage365.org, and when you go there, just for being a guest on our webpage, you will get to download 5 Keys to Living a Life of Courage. That's our free ebook just for you for showing up. And if you are somebody in a situation where you need help, please click on our Need Help tab, look at our resource list, and we have a variety of hotlines available for you to call, a bunch of organizations and supportive blogs and websites that you can reach out to. And I would just really welcome you to come to the courage365.org website, download our ebook, and click that help tab if you or someone you know is in need. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Live in courage. Mwah.